And, whoops, pardon me. So our next presenter here, her name is Sue Jones, and many of you, I'm sure most of all of you already know her. Sue Jones has an MBA as PHR. She is the owner of HR for VR. Recently moved to Idaho, I found out. And Sue Jones is owner and founder of HR VR in the vacation rental industry's first and only dedicated human resources support service provider. With over 30 years of experience in all facets of human resources, Sue is truly passionate about supporting the unique needs of property managers. The most rewarding part of Sue's job is both reducing her clients' risk exposure and being their first call when the unavoidable HR catastrophe comes to pass. She offers her HR hotline service, which gives clients direct access to Sue for answers to their most pressing HR concerns. She is also offering a free HR risk assessment for NWPRP members, which will help you assess your current legal and operational exposure. So, without further ado, Sue, welcome, and I will turn the presentation over to you at this point.
All right, thanks, John. I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm not so sure I'm excited about the topic, though, because while I'm not out there hiring these individuals, I know you all are. And when we talk about attracting and retaining and engaging our employees, trying to find the people is such a challenge right now. So I wanted to go over and give you a brief overview and an update on some information and some thoughts and some ideas that you might be able to try. Certainly, if you have questions, let me know. I'm going to just kind of ask if you want to just kind of pop in as we're going along, or wait until I'm off the slide and then we can have some questions. But I think the more dialogue we can have, I think it'll be more valuable for everyone to take away some insights from one another. So to start with, and we already had some brief coffee conversation earlier, but I wanted to go back over the unemployment rates. And just to show you, what I've done here is I've created a chart with California, Hawaii, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And when you look at this, the blue bar represents February of 2020, so a year ago. And these were the unemployment rates we were looking at then. Now, when you look at these orange lines, this was the unemployment rate in April for a majority of these states, and I think it was May for Hawaii. But if you can look, you can see where it jumped. And now the gray bar represents the unemployment rates for February of this year. And you can still see, other than Idaho, everybody's above that 5% mark with unemployment. We've got California at 9.2, Oregon's at 6.1, and Washington's at 5.6. So I'm sure you all know that. You're feeling your pain here. What I also wanted to show you was this weekly unemployment benefit piece. And this really goes to demonstrate what the weekly amount is for the unemployment benefit by state, which is the blue amount. And then that orange line is the $300 supplement that the federal government is providing through September 20th. Now, the gray line is that total compensation. And if you look in California, it can be up to $750, all the way up to Washington State on the right-hand side. Somebody at their full earning potential could be getting $1,090 a week in unemployment benefits. So as you're looking at your frontline employees and you're looking at your housekeepers and your inspectors or even your maintenance techs, most likely they're not at the full unemployment benefit level, but they certainly are going to be at a level of making an income, more suitable than, maybe what they were earning. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is one thing to consider as you're hiring people, if they are coming from the unemployment workforce, if they can still manage to have a couple of hours on unemployment. So if you keep somebody working maybe 24 hours a week or more part-time, then they still have the ability to earn a little bit unemployment, and then they will still get that $300 supplement. So what I'm suggesting is that if you're having a hard time getting people who are currently on unemployment, finding a way so that you can manage the wages you're paying so they still fall under that income threshold for unemployment and they still get that $300. So that's one thing to consider, especially if you're looking at people for, 1 or 2 days a week. So I wanted to show that because when you break this down, really right now, if somebody were earning that full maximum unemployment benefit, they would be earning anywhere from $18.50 to $27 an hour. So as we well know, those are the kinds of numbers that we're starting to see that we're paying in for the workforce. So one of the things I would recommend is I think that in this kind of environment, you really have to compete for labor by intensifying your recruitment activities. Thank you to everyone who completed the survey. I think we had about 14 responses. We had responses from California, Hawaii, Washington, Oregon. And so that's kind of where this data is falling from. When we looked at the recruitment piece, everybody, of course, the highest one was Indeed. Indeed is the best resource for this group, as well as Facebook posts. People are finding Facebook posts and sharing information and being able to share it really helps to get that word out. A couple of companies also had a great hits with their own website, as well as working with trade and vocational schools in the area. So when I think about intensifying your recruitment activities, I would encourage you to identify one individual who is responsible for recruitment during this period of time, and that's their core responsibility. Maybe backfill their other areas, but take one person who is going to be on the ball, 24/7 responding. It is the early bird catches the worm, right? Right now, if people are out looking for work, they're going to take some of those first jobs or those job opportunities that come their way. So this resource you could have with posting positions, really blasting social media. I said here, provide a snapshot of pay. And I've shared with many of you over the years a total compensation statement. I think in this situation, it's really helpful for you to put together a little picture of what the income might look like that a housekeeper or an inspector might make working for you for 2 or 3 shifts a week or full time. But show not only, the piece rate or the hourly rate, but also show the other benefits that you provide. If you're providing mileage, if you're providing incentives, if you're providing bonuses, put it all out into a little picture that you can share with people and they can visually see it. The more that people can visually see, the easier they'll be able to compare that to their current earnings. What we have seen is in this market, first hired. So it's all about that response time. And that's why I think it's important to have, one person managing the process. It doesn't mean that they have to be the ones doing all the interviewing, but they're that first point of contact and they're getting out there immediately. All right. Employee referral bonuses. Now, I'll talk a little bit about what came back on the survey, but I did want to share with you, employee referrals are your best recruitment source. And over again, it keeps coming back to this. And the statistics will share with us that 61% of employees have referred at least one employee, if not multiple. Now, typically, I'll say typically, because this is not a typical time, but typically employees will refer people who are only going to reflect positive on them. They're not going to typically throw you a slew of names if those individuals are not going to be able to do the job. Now, when you have referrals, they're 4 times more likely to be hired. And 45% of people who came in from employee referrals stayed on an average of 4 years versus maybe somebody that was sourced through Indeed or sourced through another area. They only typically stay for 2 years. Employee referrals are huge. When I looked at the survey data, there were actually this is just a very small sampling because we had 14 responses, and I think there were only 5 people who actually responded to this question. But of the 5, only 30% of the population are actually providing employee referrals. So this is where I see a huge opportunity for you in this war to kind of compete for talent or for labor, is with a significant employee referral bonus. And I used the word and I underlined it, significant, because when you think about this, $50, $100 isn't going to motivate somebody that quickly to really go back in the recesses of their mind and try to promote things. This survey, 20%, paid $50, a couple paid $100, and a couple paid $500. And I did a little bit of data research. I went back in the survey and said, okay, are we looking at the companies with over 300 properties that are paying $500? And that's not the case. So what I wanted to refresh your mind on is that cost of hire. And when you think about what it costs to hire people, you could use a benchmark of, $1,000 to $1,500 typically for an hourly individual, and somewhere from, maybe $7,500 to $10,000 for a salaried position. So when you think about that amount of cost, and again, it's not necessarily about the cost to post the job. It's not about, the cost to do a background check. It's about the cost of the time of your current resources to do this recruitment function. And so, when you add up the cost of all your manager's time, you add up your time, the time you spent trying to find individuals, you're going to well exceed $500. I would guarantee if you start to think about an employee referral bonus of $250 or more, hopefully you'll start to see some more coming in. And the nice thing is you don't have to pay it out all at once. I mean, typically what people will do is pay, a portion of it after 30 days, a second portion after 60 days, and, the remainder after 90 days. So again, if you're not doing an employee referral system, I think that this is absolutely something that you could use right now that will help you drive some help your way. Okay, then we asked a little bit about staffing levels. And so during this survey, we went out and I wanted to know, from what I've heard and working with clients around the U.S., typically companies were staffed around 80%. When we look at the actual, which is here for 2020, you can see that 35% of the companies were staffed at 100% in 2020. 21% of the companies were staffed at 90%. And then 15% were staffed at, 14%, and so on. 20% of the respondents of the survey were staffed at less than 60% last year. And, as we all know, last year, nobody knew quite what to expect as it came down upon us, but certainly not to expect that we would be running so much understaffed. I also asked, what are you projecting your staffing for? And when we talk about what we're projecting the staffing for, 65% said that they expect to be staffed at 100% this year. And 7% said 90, and then, 80% said, or 15% said 80%. I would be really interesting to know, and I don't know, I'd like to maybe get a sense from you, or if somebody wanted to share a little bit, what is it that you think you're going to be doing differently this year that's going to increase your staffing? I think that's one thing to consider. When I looked at this data and only 35% were staffed at 100%, and now we're almost doubling, saying in 2021, another 35% are going to be staffed at 100%. So, again, I think as we go into this summer season, it probably is going to be with a little bit of a lower staffing. All right. I broke it down. I wanted to look at the key positions. And, as we've talked about, even during our coffee, I don't think, while we are having, challenges hiring more operational or office or marketing reservations staff, the real hurt right now is these frontline workers, getting the housekeepers, the inspectors, getting your maintenance techs in. And so when we looked at the employment through the survey, just under 30% are hired. Housekeepers are hired as employees. 42% are hired as independent contractors. And then there's another, 28% that are hired as both, where you hire, employees and then you staff with contractors to kind of ebb the flow. Now, in California, housekeepers are predominantly hired as contractors. And in Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii, they're hired as employees and some as contractors too. And what I also found interesting was in Washington and Oregon, housekeepers are predominantly paid by the hour versus piece rate in California and Hawaii. And as I looked at this, I think, one of the things you think about with independent contractors, more often than not, we're paying piece rate. Also, when you think about Hawaii, they have a strong contractor side of the business, because once somebody works for 20 hours, they get benefits. So, they've got a lot of people they can draw from as a contractor. And when you look at the housekeeper pay, 57% pay hourly and 42% pay piece rate. And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic on the West Coast. And certainly Oregon and Washington are two states that pay more hourly. And even when I look across the U.S., I don't see that same kind of phenomenon. So I think, again, getting people in, helping them to understand what they're making and what they're earning is really important, especially if you're paying piece rate. Break it down and do the calculation and help people understand what that opportunity is for them to earn, because they can certainly earn quite an amount. And then we look at inspectors and maintenance techs. And inspectors, over 80% are hired as employees. And this makes sense. This is your QC department. This is your quality control. You want those employees working for you so that you can make sure you're directing the right pieces. And then on the maintenance, it was interesting. A little over 40% are employees, a little over 35 are contractors. And then again, we have this mixture where we're hiring both. Washington, Oregon, again, while Washington pays hourly for the maintenance techs, Oregon, it was kind of an even split between employees and contractors. And then in California and Hawaii, kind of predominantly on the contractor side. So there's no, this is kind of a down and dirty quick look, but I think, finding a model that works for you and knowing that when you're staffing across the year, you've got your level staffing with your employees. And then if you're going to bring in seasonal workers, maybe they're employees or maybe they're contractors to kind of fill that void. All right. So here were some questions on pay rates. And what we found is 50% of the people who responded to the survey increased their pay rates to attract and retain employees, and 50% did not. I saw in some of the comments, there was someone who mentioned they actually increased pay rates by $2 an hour. There were some other notes in there. And then we asked, did you offer any additional pay as a result of COVID? So some companies offered different pay, different incentives, different bonuses directly related to COVID. And in this survey, only 20% did, 80% did not. And again, some of the comments were they addressed it through salary changes and wage adjustments. So even though maybe they increased the hourly rate, it was not necessarily due to market conditions as much as it was to COVID which in turn drove the market. And when people were giving additional pay, there are four vehicles that people are using: a temporary increase to the hourly rate, increases in piece rate, bonuses, and then one-time lump sum payments. If you are bringing on an employee, or let's say you decide to raise rates for housekeepers this year and you're going to increase it by $1.50, we're just going to say that. What I would recommend is hire somebody, maybe do it as an additional pay so that over time, they're getting that additional pay versus it be a part of their salary. So if they came back the next year, because what will happen over time is once these market rates get up to, $22 to $25 an hour, over time, we will see a little bit of a shift and a drop. But again, people are using a lot of different ways to pay individuals and to incent them to come to work and to be there and to do a great job. So when I think about this competing for labor with additional pay, I don't know how many of you are offering a hiring or a sign-on bonus. This is another thing that is really coming back into play. Offering someone $500 to take the job, and you can turn it into maybe a bonus focused on retention, where they get, immediate payment, their first paycheck, and then, halfway through the season they get some, and then at the end of the season they get some. Or give it to them, a sooner period of time. But this is something that's really come back into play, especially on the HR side with companies all over. When I think about increasing seasonal wages, temporary adjustments, being competitive with piece rates, shift premiums. Now, a lot of times we'd see shift premiums when you think about manufacturing or hospitals or operations that are 24/7, like you all are. But you also have a shift premium getting people to show up on key back-to-back days. So, that's something else that you may want to consider, is offering a shift premium. Maybe it's $25 for that shift just because it's at a premium. Incentives, lots of incentives that you can, try to get out there, whether it's just from an attendance and showing up, or, I think somewhere I read in some of the comments from the survey, one of the incentives that someone was offering was doing a additional rate per house or unit. So for each home, they got an additional $25, or for each condo, they got an additional $15. So there's lots of things you can do to deal with incentives. And then, retention bonuses. When you think about a sign-on bonus, you want to, give money to somebody when they sign on, but you may also want to have a retention bonus and say, if you stay with us through the end of this season, at the end of the season, you're going to get a check for $500 or $1,000. And again, you can put metrics in place. You can do guest scores, you can do clean scores, you can do inspection scores. Doesn't mean they automatically get this money, but the more that you can do to provide different types of incentives and keep that money in front of people, I think will help in getting them to come and to stay. And then, I put here, raise wages for hard to fill positions. And back in the year 2000, I was working at Northeastern University implementing a PeopleSoft system, and I had to hire like 25 programmers to come in. Well, during the year Y2K, all these programmers were working on converting the data from 2 digits to 4 digits behind the scenes. And a programmer who probably cost about $40,000 in that market at that time was earning over $100,000 a year. And it was because that skill set was in such high demand. So again, these positions with your housekeepers, your inspectors, maintenance techs, the ones that are in this high demand, you can certainly pay them a premium, even if you're paying them, more than maybe you're paying your reservationist. You need to think about the fact that your core employee group that you have, your base year round, is getting a lot of other benefits in that. But these hard to fill positions that are coming in on a seasonal basis, I think right now you're going to have to really kind of show them the money. And I just wanted to bring out this case about the market rate, because you can certainly change rates. What you can't do is pay one housekeeper $15 an hour and pay another one $30 an hour, unless you can, say they've been there forever or whatever. But what I am suggesting is, if, you think about your salaries, and the housekeeping and these direct rates have maybe been on the lower end, they're now the positions in demand. So, kind of think about flipping it upside down. One individual who really had a great, I think she actually wrote a book on it, was Maureen Regan out in Wells, Maine, and she only had a 6-week season. And so at that point, she really had to get creative with getting that talent in. And, her philosophy at that point was, these housekeepers, these positions make more than everybody else on the team during this period of time, because these are the people we need, at this high level. Another piece is to really focus on what differentiates you. Think about your culture, different opportunities to continue employment, become, year-round, full-time, the training you provide. The key, especially I think, as you've all learned this past year, is flexibility and adaptability. It's like, it was amazing. We used to always say, leave your problems at the door. Well, now, half of the people, they're working from home. Their problems are right in the home at the door. And so you've got to learn to be a little more flexible, a little more adaptable with individual situations. So really focus in on what differentiates you, and try to communicate that, because that's the other piece that really drives people to want to come to work for your business. We don't want to forget, competing for labor with benefits, and, flexible schedules. I'm not sure, especially if you're hiring as employees or if you're hiring contractors, but thinking about maybe hiring someone for just one day a week. I mean, if you can get someone for one day a week, it's probably a good deal right now. And hopefully you don't have to have 50 people just working one day a week, but there may be an opportunity for someone to come in and fill there. So thinking about some more flexible schedules. Weekly pay. There are still employers in the area paying, outside of weekly, maybe paying biweekly, semi-monthly, and even monthly. So another thing to consider, if you're paying biweekly, maybe go down to weekly payroll during the summer. Again, getting people that money quickly is really important. And especially if you're looking to attract somebody. If you're looking to attract somebody, they're not going to want to wait a month to get paid. On-the-job training is another key area. I say food to go, because, when they're picking up their laundry bags or they're picking up their housekeeping kits, to pick up, breakfast to go or a sandwich or muffin or something like that is always great. Logo gear. And then on the spot recognition, I think this becomes even more important right now, because you want to let people know that you're appreciating that work that they're doing. And so really making an effort to go around and give out some on the spot rewards with gas cards or gift cards or, Walmart or Target cards. Transportation and mileage reimbursement is something as well. And especially, I think, for those of you on the coast, that, your housekeepers are traveling could be between 10, 15 or 20 miles on occasion to get to the homes. I mentioned transportation here as another piece, is when you're looking for individuals, thinking about transportation, because there could be a whole workforce out there who may not have a license, who may not have a vehicle. So is there a way that you can provide transportation to get people to and from work or to and from the homes? And sometimes that could be just as easy as hiring someone to be a driver for a couple days a week. I know I make this sound easy. I don't want to make it sound easy, because I know it's not. But you've got to get really creative and start thinking outside of the box. When we were having coffee this morning, Brian from Beachcomber Vacation Homes was sharing with us that he has found a good repository of talent through the banking industry. if you think about some of these industries where they've trained people in customer service, where they've trained people in, dealing with public and dealing with difficult situations, that could be an area to really go and to recruit from as well, because they may not all have their job there. Housing assistance. And, this probably is the biggest conundrum for most property managers is, there is no housing, there is no affordable housing, and a lot of people, as they're building laundry facilities now, are building it as a 2-story and putting apartments up above for housing for people. People that are living close to universities are reaching out to the universities to see if if they've got spacing in dorms during the summer to house people. So again, the other thing that we're also seeing is that people are helping with the housing assistance by maybe giving a stipend to help them to find housing or to find a place to rent. And then the last thing is kind of this dependent care assistance. And I mentioned dependent care because now you can't necessarily always assume that an employee is only, caring for their children. They also may be caring for elderly parents, or, they have others in the home. But providing some assistance, so maybe it's a vehicle for them to put away savings to pay for it, but thinking about how you can help them with providing dependent care assistance. The other benefit that has been showing up, again, it was probably a lot more relevant back in the 10 years ago as we were going through the economic crisis or following 9/11, but is employee assistance programs. And most employee assistance programs come with your benefits or life insurance benefits, but they provide resources for your employees to reach out if they need help with maybe contacting with a lawyer to do a will or to do a health assessment, or if they need to talk to someone from a counseling perspective, or if they need someone to find daycare for their children. So these employee assistance programs are there to assist your employees with some of those duties that take their focus away from the day-to-day job, those things that need to get done. So that might be another area for you to focus in and consider. So before we kind of head into some questions here, I want you to know that I think everybody feels this pain, and in some areas more than others, obviously. This is the time to be creative. Get your marketing team out there, get some flyers, get postings, think whatever you can do to get in front of people. And that's why I really recommended, don't try to parse out a lot of the recruitment stuff right now. See if you can have somebody take it on full time for the next, 4 weeks to get you the people in the door. Implementing that significant employee referral bonus. I think that you will find that as a true help in getting people to come in your way. Offering that additional pay for hard to fill positions, and really think about shift premiums. If you're having a hard time getting people on those back-to-back days, start thinking about paying a premium for that time. And then, enhancing your employee benefits. And, I'm not necessarily saying health insurance, dental, and vision, but enhancing those benefits that are going to have a real impact on the employee right now. And then, focus on what differentiates you from your business and your competitors down the street. What is it about your business that draws people to want to come and work for you? And then the last piece I did not put on here was, that little snapshot. If you head out to my website, a lot of the articles are out there. There's one on total compensation statements. But I think if you come up with a little graphic that really shows people what their earning opportunity is, I think that will help too. Because when you talk about hiring somebody for piece rate, if they don't understand piece rate, they don't really understand how to equate that to making $15 an hour. So I really think it's important to kind of show that illustration. Here's your piece rate. Here's what you're going to make versus if you're making, $15 an hour. It's just doing the math for people so that they can visually see that. So I've covered off on quite a lot. Corey has the PDF of the presentation and all of that, but I really hope that there are some takeaways here, some nuggets that you might be able to work with. And, I know we have a few minutes here, but, I'd love to take any questions or thoughts, or if anyone has any ideas of what they've been doing that's been successful. I think that would be wonderful to hear.
Hey, Sue, thanks so much. I think you hit it on the nail on the head there when you talked about the employee bonuses, referral bonuses. And we started that a few weeks ago, and it's already produced a couple of really good referrals for us. And it was something that I always was hesitant to do over the years. And I just decided that I needed to do it because I was, a little more desperate, and it worked. So that was a great piece. Thank you.
Yeah. It's definitely very powerful.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sue. That's it answers a lot of questions that I know that we've been asking ourselves as we were talking about before we started, and it just gave some great insight as to how to recruit good people. So really appreciate your time on that. Does anybody else have any other questions? Or sure,
I think Megan does.
Yep, yeah. Megan.
I'm a good participator. Hey, I did have somebody give me an idea, and I have not looked into like the legality of it yet. But somebody was suggesting like paid lunches for housekeepers, not like their food, but just that paid through their lunch break.
Yeah,
like a restaurant would.
Yes, and that is typically a strong business practice in the industry, especially because if the housekeepers are out in the field, you can't necessarily be guaranteed that they're going to take a half an hour and go sit somewhere and have a lunch. Mm-hmm. And so again, most companies will pay right through the lunch. And so then there's no issues with, not having them take a lunch or a break. And the reason that you can do that is because more often than not, these individuals who are working in your homes are working independently. So there's nobody that can come in there and give them a break to go to lunch. So that's kind of the go around on the legal side, is that because they're independent workers, there isn't, somebody to provide relief. Like when you're in an office, somebody else can cover the phones. So I would definitely encourage you to consider that if that's something that you're not currently doing. Great.
Good question. Thank you. Good comments, Megan.
Thanks, Megan.
Anybody else have any other questions or thoughts before we move on? Anybody else have any other thoughts or comments or questions before we move on? Okay, so again, what Sue mentioned is Corey does have a PDF copy of this presentation. So if you would like it, you can reach out to Corey at Update Management, and she can get you a copy of it if you would like. So Sue, once again, thank you so much for the presentation. And as always, I always learn a lot when I listen to you. It's very informative, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your
Thanks
time.
for having me. I really enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing everybody in person, hopefully,
Yes.
in October.
Yeah, October, Seaside in Oregon. Looking forward to it myself. Yeah, absolutely. I hope